almost anything anyone said about Bryson DeChambeau during that entire time. And we'll get to exactly what Tiger said. But first, you need to understand who Bryson DeChambeau actually was before any of this started. Most people remember Bryson DeChambeau as the guy who got huge during COVID. But before all of that, he was already one of the stranger stories in professional golf. Physics major at SMU, he played with single-length irons, every iron in his bag cut to 37.5 inches, the same length as a 7-iron because he decided the math worked better that way. He approached the game like a problem to be solved, and a lot of people in golf found that deeply irritating. But it worked. He turned pro in 2016 and won 4 times on the PGA Tour in 2018 alone. He wasn't a long hitter by any means. Driving distance wasn't his thing. What he had was this almost obsessive precision. He'd calculated the angles and the numbers and figured out a method, and the method was producing results. Then the COVID shutdown happened, and Bryson DeChambeau made a decision. He'd looked at the strokes gained data and concluded that the single biggest advantage a golfer could create was distance off the tee. So he spent 3 months in quarantine doing one thing, gaining 40 pounds to swing the club faster than anyone alive. When golf came back, the numbers were real. He was averaging over 320 yards off the tee, hitting driver on par 4s that most players were attacking with a mid-iron. In July, he won the Rocket Mortgage Classic with a driving average of 350.6 yards, the highest ever recorded for a winner in PGA Tour history. The question everyone was asking now was simple: can he actually control that much power when it matters? That was the question Tiger Woods answered. In July 2020 at the Memorial Tournament, before anyone had fully processed what Bryson was doing, Tiger sat down in a press conference and said this: "He's gotten stronger, faster, bigger, and has created more speed. He's hitting it further, but let's look at the fact that he's hitting it as straight as he is. That's the part that's the most difficult thing to do. The farther you hit it, the more the tangent goes crooked." So, the fact that he's figured that out and has been able to rein in the foul balls, to me, has been equally as impressive as his gains off the tee distance-wise. Now, Tiger wasn't just handing out compliments. He almost never does. What he was doing was identifying the specific thing that made Bryson genuinely dangerous. And it wasn't the distance itself. It was that Bryson had solved the problem that usually comes with distance. When you swing the club faster, small errors in your swing get amplified. The ball goes further offline, not just further down the fairway. It's why most players who chase speed eventually give it back in accuracy. Tiger understood this better than almost anyone. He'd been the longest player on tour in the late 90s, and even he knew that keeping that power straight was the hardest part. Tiger also added something worth noting. When he bulked up earlier in his own career, his goal was the opposite of Bryson's. "I got bigger and I filled out and tried to get stronger." It was to not hit the ball further. It was to be more consistent and to be able to practice longer. In fact, his driving distance actually went down. Bryson did it the other way, specifically, deliberately, to generate more speed. And Tiger looked at that, understood what it meant, and said the control was just as impressive as the yards. That comment was made in July 2020. 2 months later, the whole golf world got the proof. The 2020 US Open was held at Winged Foot in New York, one of the most punishing venues in major championship history. 3-time US Open venue, rough so thick you couldn't see your feet. Narrow fairways, firm greens, and a setup specifically designed to make big hitters pay for missing fairways. The conventional wisdom going in was clear. Winged Foot would stop Bryson DeChambeau. You had to keep it in the short grass. You had to be precise. That was what Winged Foot demanded. Bryson's plan, however, was to hit the driver on almost every hole regardless. Here's what happened. He hit only 23 of 56 fairways all week. the fewest of any U.S. Open winner since the USGA started keeping track. He was in ankle-deep rough constantly. He was hitting wedges from spots where everyone else was hitting mid-irons. And on the 9th hole Sunday, having just moved into a one-shot lead over Matthew Wolff, he hit a 375 yards tee shot and drained a 40-foot eagle putt to effectively end the tournament. He was the only player in the entire field to finish under par for the week. He won by 6 shots. Rory McIlroy stood in front of the cameras afterward and said, "I don't really know what to say because that's just the complete opposite of what you think a US Open champion does. Look, he's found a way to do it. Whether that's good or bad for the game, I don't know." Rory wasn't saying it the way Tiger said it. There was no admiration for the mechanics, no breakdown of why the control was impressive. It was more like someone watching something they couldn't explain and didn't entirely want to accept. But that reaction, in its own way, proved Tiger's point. The golf world had just watched Bryson do exactly what Tiger said he could. After Winged Foot, everyone wanted a piece of what Bryson had done. Rory started working on swing speed. Tony Finau experimented with it. The governing bodies got so spooked that by 2022, the USGA introduced a local rule allowing tournaments to cap driver shaft length, a rule that existed, essentially, because of one person. But wanting what Bryson had and actually getting it turned out to be two very different things. You could add speed. What you couldn't easily add was the control that came with it. Finau eventually backed off and returned his focus to his short game. Others tried and hit a wall too. And then Bryson himself hit a rough stretch. He joined LIV Golf in 2022, his world ranking dropped, and the doubts started creeping back in. Some people began to wonder whether Winged Foot had just been a product of favorable circumstances. Maybe it wasn't repeatable. Maybe it was a one-time thing. That was the question sitting over Bryson heading into 2024. The 2024 US Open at Pinehurst, number 2. Bryson starts Sunday with a 3-shot lead. Rory McIlroy, still searching for his first major in nearly a decade, fights back until they're essentially level heading to the last hole. And then Bryson pulls his drive way left. He's got tree limbs in his way, a root near his ball, no clean path to the green. He punches out sideways into the front bunker, 55 yards from the pin, needing a par to win the US Open. What happens next is the kind of thing that gets remembered. He holes the bunker shot to tap-in distance. McIlroy, who had missed 2 short putts late in the round, watches from the scorer's hut. Bryson makes the putt. He wins by 1. He later calls it the shot of his life. And walking off that 18th green, he takes off his cap and points to the pin on the back of it. A silhouette of Payne Stewart, his fellow SMU alumnus, whose iconic par putt on that same 18th hole had won the US Open at Pinehurst exactly 25 years earlier. With the victory, Bryson DeChambeau joined Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods as the only 3 players in history to win a US Amateur, an NCAA championship, and a US Open. 3 players in the entire history of the sport. Now, let's go back to what Tiger said in July 2020. He didn't say Bryson was impressive because of how far he hit it. He said the accuracy was just as impressive. He said figuring out how to rein it in, to keep the ball under control while hitting it harder than anyone had ever hit it on tour, was the actual achievement. 4 years later, at Pinehurst, with the US Open on the line, in the worst position you could find yourself on the 72nd hole, Bryson DeChambeau pulled off the hardest shot of his